such as your cell or desk phone, so that there aren't any disruptions during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for board members, committee members, and AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. That means that you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comments. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make a public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raise your hand button. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raise hand button on the screen. For those calling in using a phone on the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to make a comment. Your name will be called when it is your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes for the entirety of the calendar, and 3 minutes for each agenda item. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. Please note you can hang up or leave Zoom at any time. On the decorum side, please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being dropped from the meeting. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Legislative Committee meeting on January 15th, which is Martin Luther King Day also. And I'll ask for a roll call first, please.
Good morning. Dr. Burke? Councilmember Buscaino?
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Senator Delgado? Supervisor Perez? Supervisor Rutherford? Councilmember Mitchell?
Here, thank you.
So we don't have a quorum, so we can go with the consultant updates, and hopefully we'll have a couple others committee members join us.
Right, I think they're just late in joining, but they will be with us. That's indicated they are going to come this morning. So let's start with the updates on the federal side. And we have Amelia Jenkins first up. Amelia, are you ready to give us an update on the report?
I am.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Amelia Jenkins with Cassidy and Associates. We'll be dividing different parts of the federal update. What I'm going to cover is just from the report, we've submitted some additional updates on both the confirmation process for Biden nominees and then the outcome of the end of year must pass spending legislation. So as we move into next week, inauguration week, it is likely that we'll see some activity on an initial slate of nominees for cabinet positions. Again, we have Michael Regan for EPA administrator, and Brenda Mallory for CEQ. Those names may be familiar to some of you. Also within the White House structure, and these are positions which are not eligible for the confirmation process, Gina McCarthy will be the domestic climate advisor, and she had a staff name yesterday. Initial indications are that we might see the Secretary of Energy as part of an initial slate, but it's unclear what other nominees will go through near inauguration. I want to talk briefly about some of the things that were in the end of the year spending bill, and then talk briefly about what was in the Biden proposal that was released last night. Of note, in the omnibus spending package was $2.5 billion in the Department of Energy's budget for fuel cell vehicle and bioenergy. So that's approximately, starting in fiscal year 2021, about $830 million the first year, $855 million the second year, and $880 million the third year. Last night, President-elect Biden released his $1.9 trillion COVID proposal. economic recovery proposal. In that is $350 billion for state, local, and tribal governments. The details on what that's for, again, sort of aren't ready. In addition to releasing the COVID-related immediate measure, he plans to announce at the joint session of Congress next month a climate infrastructure package, which he's hinted will have funding for clean energy, climate resilient ports, and research and development. So we have money coming down the pike because of the last year's spending bill, the end of the year spending bill. And then it looks like we have 2 more tranches that are potentially coming through Biden proposals, which obviously the legislature has to work on as well. So let me stop there.
Thank you, Amelia. Any questions for Amelia on this report?
Madam Chair, maybe I could just provide some additional information. So this morning, Janet McCabe was announced as the Deputy Administrator for US EPA. Janet McCabe was the prior acting AA, so I guess you could say she was the principal deputy toward the end of the Obama administration. We had worked closely with her on our petition submittal, and I think it's a good choice. Obviously, she's very close with Gina McCarthy, and I think she'll be a good addition, and she'll be a friend to the South Coast. So just wanted to note that.
Great, that's really good news.
Yep.
It looks like we may be able to get a bit more done in this arena of air quality and climate control. So I'm looking forward to that. Amelia, I do have a question. Any new news, we're kind of following this minute by minute, on when the article of impeachment might be submitted to the Senate, because that may slow down some of the things that we expect to happen under the new administration.
I think that's part of also when we may anticipate some of these cabinet nominees moving forward. I ultimately think it may be delayed. I mean, this is just me guessing, at least for 30 days. The House can hold it. And given the release of this COVID package and I think the focus, understandably, that the incoming administration wants to make on COVID and vaccinations and things like that, I could see maybe a 30-day reprieve. Again, that's me guessing. But at least if it is in sort of that mode, some can be done, and it's possible the staff is able to do whatever background work and some of the ongoing investigations into some of the details of what happened will be firmed up.
Okay, I guess we're all it's a wait and see kind of thing, I think is where we are. Any committee members have any questions or comments on Amelia's report? Good morning, Supervisor Rutherford. I see you have joined us. Okay, let's move on to Kadish and Associates, and Mark Kadish is with us this morning. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead and
good morning.
Your
good morning,
update,
Madam
your
Chair.
opinion.
Just a few brief updates to our written report. I wanted to update everyone on our incoming senator, Senator Padilla. He has still not been sworn in, so he has not assumed his role yet, but we expect it can't be later than the 20th, so it's this week that he will take over. Of note for us, he has hired his senior staff, so he's hired his chief of staff, someone named Dave Montez, who was Ruben Gallegos from New Mexico's chief of staff, but he also had worked previously for Mayor Villaraigosa, so he has some Southern California background, and by all accounts, a very good guy. Ben Miller on my team knows him. I have not worked with him previously. The legislative director who will handle the legislative portfolio will be Josh Esquivel. Josh currently is Senator Feinstein's legislative director. So that's good news for us in the sense that he's been helpful. He had previously done appropriations for Senator Feinstein and followed most of our air issues. So I think that's good news for us staffing wise. And they're in the process now of trying to fill out all of the rest of the staff, which will be a large task, as you know. Quick updates on some of on the issues that we've been following to close the year out for you. I think you're all familiar with the Targeted Airshed Grant Program. One of the issues that we were following is that the House decided to increase the number of eligible recipients from 5 to 10, but keep the number relatively the same. And as a consequence, we thought that would hurt South Coast. And we do very well under the TAG program. So we went to Senator Feinstein, and I'm happy to say Cassidy and Associates reached out to Senator Murkowski and Senator Merkley, and together we were all able to argue that the Senate position of 5 eligible recipients rather than 10 was useful and helpful and made sense unless you were going to double the money. And that was what did come out in conference. And so it will be again 5. With regard to the funding for TAG, the final funding number was $59 million, which is up $2.7 million from the previous year. The other programs that we've been following closely are the DERA program. That number came out at $90 million, an increase of $3 million from the 21 bill. And then the 103, 105 program ended up at $229.5 million, which is up $1.5 million. So overall, I think that the numbers were good, and the policy outcomes were good for us. And as you said, Madam Chair, I think, in terms of air and those issues, I think we will get a lot of priority coming up. I would note that Amelia talked about the COVID relief package. President-elect Biden has also indicated that he's going to do an infrastructure package, Build America Back. A huge component of that is not only infrastructure, but electrification. So there will be, I think, some components that will be enormously helpful to air quality, and we'll obviously work with Derek and Lisa and your team to do as well as we can in that package. But I think the intention is to have a lot of money for those sorts of things going forward.
Great.
My
Okay.
report.
Thank you. Do we have any more information about when the 2 senators from Georgia will be sworn in, as well as Senator Padilla?
So I think it's either the 19th or the 20th. It can't be later than the 20th at noon. I've heard that it may be the 19th, and that the 3 of them will be done together.
I see. Okay.
Hey, Ron, Supervisor Perez is trying to get in. Can you move him over?
Okay. Any questions for Mark Kadish on that report? Thank you. We'll go on to the Gary Hoitzma from Carmen Group. Gary was our lead guy on the infrastructure package we thought we might get under the Trump administration. So what news do you have for us, Gary, on moving forward? You're muted, so you need to unmute, Gary.
Is that better there?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, as we look forward procedurally going forward, we see that the House made some rule changes, one of which was to amend its PAYGO rules. You know, that was the rule that said any budgetary proposals that go over the budget limits have to be offset by spending cuts or tax increases. And so you have the pay-as-you-go rule there. Now, they've amended that to exempt COVID relief and anything related to COVID, and they've also exempted climate and anything related to climate. So that gives them a lot of running room with regard to these 2 bills coming up, the COVID bill and the infrastructure / climate bill that we'll see later. So they're busting the spending limits on those two things. So in some ways you can look at that as positive. It will allow some of the things that we're looking for to possibly get through that might not otherwise do so. Now, secondly, they've also had a lot of discussion here in the last few days about a budget process called budget reconciliation. We've heard about that before. That's a Senate process that allows passage of certain tax and spending bills with only 51 votes, not having to get to 60 votes, provided that the bills in question meet certain criteria about tax and spending. And those criteria are set by the Budget Committee. Now, the Budget Committee now will be chaired by Bernie Sanders. He's already made some discussion about how he's going to use this process to assist in getting the Biden agenda through. We have to consider that in the context of also the Senate being at 51-50, 50-50 with the Vice President casting the tie-breaking vote. So the Democrats still are going to have unity on their side. They're at a point where they can't lose one member without picking up another Republican or otherwise. So they're on a razor's edge there with a 50-50 Senate. So we'll just have to see how that works out. I also want to just point, as I got a little time left, I just like to point out one item in my written report. I noted that the EPA has launched this clearinghouse for environmental finance. I don't know if you've seen that, but they're basically establishing a website where people, the public, communities, and others can go to get information about EPA funding programs and a lot of EPA resources that are out there with regard to EPA programs within air, land, and water. And so you go to that website now and you can see you have a choice to go to air, land, or water. You go to the air section and you see this long list of, environmental funding programs by the EPA, but also by other federal agencies like the Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, and also some state and local. You see CARB programs, you see a couple of South Coast programs on there. And I think it's a work in progress. They have a button there for environmental justice, which has not been built out yet, but I think this is a site that will go over into the new administration. I think it will be built out further, so we'll just have to keep an eye on that, but it's a good resource. And I encourage you to take a look at it.
Gary, is that on the EPA website? Where
it's on the EPA website. I've got the link, the address for the link in my report there. You'll see it right there.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's useful. It's probably a good tool, not just for their district, but for local agencies also to check and see what might be available. City of Los Angeles, City of County of San Bernardino, etc. Okay.
Madam Chair, we have Supervisor Perez joined us.
Oh, good. Okay.
Everyone had a struggle trying to get on here.
Yeah, good morning. It's always a bit of a struggle depending on what website it is and what my link is. So thanks for joining us, Supervisor. Are there any questions for Gary on his report?
Madam Chair, if I may, for Gary, I know you have your finger on the pulse on transportation needs for our region. I've been requested, just to let you know, I know Derek is also made aware of this, and Wayne, that I'll be a witness to the first session of the House Transportation Committee on January 27th, representing cities. Be talking mostly about transportation, ports, airports, COVID impacts as it relates to infrastructure needs and wants. And Gary, if you can just connect with district staff here if there's anything I need to add in my testimony to the committee, that'll be helpful. Thank you.
I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Happy to do that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe, for all your work, and that is in connection with the National Cities Organization,
Yes, yes, Madam Chair.
League of Cities. Yes. Okay. Good. So Supervisor Perez, welcome. We've just gone through the reports from the federal consultants. Do you have any questions you might want to ask about their reports or what's happening in Washington?
No, not. I'll just read through it and.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And now I will ask for a public comment on the federal reports. Is there anyone who wants to make a comment on this? Ron, do you have anybody lined up?
No, Madam Chair. No public.
Okay. Great, thank you. We'll move on to our state consultants. And first up from California Advisors, we have Ross Buckley. Ross, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today marks the end of the first week of the legislative session here in Sacramento. In fact, the Assembly and Senate just kicked off just a couple of minutes ago to wrap up their first week. As you may recall, the legislative leaders back in December, because of the surge numbers we were seeing in December, made the decision to push back the return to Sacramento back by a week for safety reasons. Much like last year, we're all creatures of habit, and we're all very, we know the deadlines of the legislature. Flexibility is going to be key in getting the state's work done this year. And we've already seen a little delay in the session, and we're likely to see additional delays or changes in the session as we go through this year, just depending on outbreaks and surges and whatnot. And, obviously everyone's top idea is to, do it safely and do state's work safely. But there is still a lot to get done. Many of the same rules will be in place this year that were put in place last year. That includes limited bills introduced, limited policy committee meetings to kind of control the amount of work, but also to adhere to social distancing in bigger rooms and things like that. For members, they've been having to do at-home testing before they come to Sacramento this past week, which is an interesting thing for members to have to do to come to session, but it's part of our reality right now. Another thing is that they're only being allowed one staffer in the state capitol, which, for some of the established members is they've gotten used to Zoom and things like that. But when I've talked to some of the freshman members who are just starting to hire and set up their offices, that's been a little bit challenging to them, but they're making the best that they can do. I guess some observers would even ask, why are they coming back in January? Why don't they wait? Why don't they push it out? However, the legislature is returning to a number of high priority issues and really a full plate to get done and the ASAP. Those issues include the eviction moratorium for residential properties. There was a deal last year that pushed it. This was August of last year that pushed it out to February, those protections. So they're going to end in a couple of weeks. They need to extend those. I think we all had hope back in August that we'd be somewhat out of this by February of this year, but it's not quite the case. So action will be needed taken on that. Also, there's a number of urgent budget items that need to be taken care of. We'll get to in a second. And kind of the third thing that they need to work on is getting the latest round of federal stimulus that happened in December 2020. They need to make sure that that money gets out. Moving back to the budget real quickly, the governor announced his 2021-2022 budget proposal last Friday. This is obviously a big day where he unveils kind of his priorities. His state budget included $227.2 billion, which of that includes $164.5 billion of general fund spending. The governor calls for a number of early action items, which include $2 billion to reopen schools. That's gotten a lot of publicity in the news. $2.4 billion for what he's calling the Golden State stimulus, which is an extra $600 for kind of low income Californians, those who earned income tax credit. $700 million for job creation, $1.5 billion for electric vehicle and EV infrastructure purposes, and then another $400 million for kind of helping with the vaccine rollout. These are just a number of kind of top line issues that he's called for. A lot of these budget items will be acted on within the next 3 or 4 weeks. Some of them will be acted on what he's saying is early spring, so in the next couple of months. As you'll recall, every year, June 15th is the budget deadline. So we've got 6 months for the actual budget deadline, but the governor's indicated and the legislature has somewhat agreed with that they want to do a number of these items as soon as possible, given the possibility for delays and kind of the time sensitivity nature of some of these issues. This governor's announcement, I will say, is the first step of a very long process. Again, a 6-month process where they really try to hammer out the budget deal. The legislature has already started to schedule committee hearings so they can have their say in what their priorities are, and they'll start to craft their version of the budget. And that's just kind of up to negotiations between the governor and the legislature, legislative leaders to kind of hone that final deal. That concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ross on that report? Seeing none, we will move on to Paul Gonzalez from Gonzalez and Sons. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members, and Happy New Year to everybody. I wanted to pick up just briefly on where Ross left off on the budget. He did a very good job kind of laying the groundwork of it. I specifically wanted to talk about the governor's proposed $1.37 billion cap and trade expenditure plan. This proposal includes this year's cap and trade revenues and the last year's cap and trade revenues that were not included in last year's budget agreement. So of the $1.37 billion, $325 million is being directed to the AB 617 program, of which $50 million is dedicated to local air districts and $10 million is dedicated for technical assistance to community groups. The cap and trade expenditure plan also includes $635 million to reducing emissions from the transportation sector. This includes $315 million for clean trucks, buses, and off-road freight equipment, $170 million for agricultural diesel engine replacement and upgrades, and $150 million for the Clean Cars for All and transportation equity projects. The remaining cap and trade funds are proposed to be spent on wildfire prevention and water projects. In addition to the cap and trade program, something of interest to the district, the governor has proposed the renewal of AB8, the Alternative Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program, or also known as the Carl Moyer Program. That's set to expire in 2024. And as you know, the Carl Moyer Program provides incentive funding for air districts to distribute locally. The reason the governor's office is proposing this new program is because the governor wants to securitize $1 billion of future AB8 revenues to expand the clean transportation program for zero-emission vehicle infrastructure. Additionally, they want to support incentive programs to accelerate the turnover of existing light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and equipment, including off-road construction and agricultural equipment and locomotives. The proposal will extend the AB8 program to 2045, which coincides directly with the governor's recent executive order for 100% zero-emission vehicles by 2045. So as Ross had mentioned, this is really the kickoff, if you will, of the budget negotiations between the legislature and the governor, and this budget document will change. For example, the Assembly Budget Committee met earlier this week, and there were 2 Democratic legislators who expressed concerns with the governor's focus on clean vehicles, while at the same time there's so many people throughout the state and businesses that are suffering and need assistance. So there was just kind of a tension there that was already, quick to be in the forefront out the gate. So it's going to be interesting to see the legislature's priorities and the changes that they'll make between now and the May revise. And all 3 firms that represent the district will be working closely together with your staff, with the governor's office, the Department of Finance, legislative leadership, and all of your delegation to ensure that whatever changes are made over the next few months are of benefit to the district. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There's always this give and take on where the money goes and where it's needed. So we would expect there to be some discussion about that over the next few months. Any questions for Paul on that report? Seeing none, we'll move on to Resolute, and we have David Quintana with us this morning. Good morning, David.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm going to start off, and then I will hand it to my partner, Jarrell Cook, for a different item. The only thing that I would like to add to my report is perhaps add a little color to what's going on in the Attorney General selection here in California. Right now, I think the insiders still believe that it's most likely to be an Asian American who will be appointed to that. Of course, that is the insiders. I know that there is a lot of, there are a number of other candidates being pushed. The leading candidates right now appear to be the Sacramento candidate. I think there's there is a lot of support coalescing around Rob Bonta. Recently, David Chu, who was rumored to be another candidate for Attorney General, came out with a support letter for Mr. Bonta. Supervisor Alejo it also came out, a former legislator came out saying that he believed that Rob Bonta would stand for the concerns of Latinos and Latinas within the state of California. So he's getting a lot of that insider support. Recently, however, the outsider candidate, by outsider I mean not the legislative candidate, appears to be current California Supreme Court member Goodwin Liu. There have been a number of letters in the newspapers being written, a number of pieces, op-eds being written on behalf of Mr. Liu, and saying that he would be the best. A lot of this support seems to be coming from a lot of the African-American communities based upon some of the decisions that Mr. Liu and some of the dicta in his cases that he has written in support of BLM and other matters related to that. Other names in there are Ash Kalra. I know for a fact that Ash Kalra has been, he's an assemblyman from San Jose. He has been seeking, very actively seeking support letters from people. So he's still making a push for this. And a group of Latina legislators sent out a letter last week in which they said that they would like for the governor to appoint a Latina. They weren't clear on who that would be. They mentioned Assemblywoman Eloise Reyes, Senator Susan Talamantes Eggman, and Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez. That does not seem to be gaining as much traction, though, as Bonta and Goodwin Liu. So I had, in preparation for this call, I had a call with Assemblyman Rob Bonta last night and asked him what the timeline was for this. He said that he believes in his discussions with the people in the horseshoe that the timeline has sped up now that the Georgia election has come out the way that it has. I think the timeline was going to be a lot longer if the Republicans had won in Georgia, because then the approval process would have been, I think they believe, delayed. Now that 2 Democrats have come in, Assemblyman Bonta told me he thinks that they should make a decision in 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, this is all conjecture. But that at least came directly from Assemblyman Bonta. He's hearing 2 to 3 weeks. Anyway, that's the only thing I wanted to add, was just an update on what we're hearing on the Attorney General selection in Sacramento. And Jerome.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of litigation, as we've been following from the California Resources Board and the tailpipe emissions issue that we've been fighting over the last few years. So it'll be interesting to see who gets this job, and they'll inherit a lot of important cases. So any questions for David Quintana on that report? Seeing none, good, we're moving right along. Any public comment on these?
Madam Chair, I think you want Jarrell to report on something.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, just briefly.
I'm sorry. Yes, there you are, Jarrell. Go ahead. I just thought.
No problem at all. I will be brief. We wanted to just provide a quick status update, checking in on the status of the appointees to the Air Resources Board. As we discussed last month, the governor appointed Leanne Randolph to chair CARB. That appointment is sort of moving right along. It was submitted to the legislature and the Rules Committee on January 4th. Similarly, the governor's other appointee, Gideon Krakoff's nomination, was submitted to the Rules Committee on January 7th. What we are seeing is that the Rules Committee is slated to meet on January 20th in a closed session, so we're not expecting any movement on that this month. Possibly, and by tradition, we're seeing appointees move without any controversy early in the year, around February or March. We are not expecting any pushback from any major groups on either of those nominees. Although Assemblymember Randolph, there has been some commentary from some sectors in the environmentalist movements or groups. She seems to have the support of several environmental justice groups, as well as a big push from the African American community. So we're not expecting any controversial opposition, and they should be rolling through smoothly.
Okay, good. So I remember going through that process, and so I think Gideon will do just fine. Any questions for Gerald on that, Jarrell? Okay, good. Then let's, Joe, who would take over for me? And there's somebody outside my door banging, and I need to go see what's going on. So who would be the next person to take over the agenda here? We're at public comment on state legislative matters.
I'll get it, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe.
Go ahead, ma'am. Okay, so let's now open public comment for the reports from our consultants. Ron?
There's no public comment.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which I believe.
Ron, can you mute Mayor Mitchell, because we can hear her?
So we item number 3 is now before us. We can have direct staff to make a presentation on HR 8626.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think it's 7024, Councilman Busquino. HR 7024.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see that now. HR 7024.
Okay, great. Good morning, Chair Mitchell and members of the committee. I will be presenting today on HR 7024, the Climate Smart Ports Act, introduced by Congresswoman Nanette Barragan, who represents the 44th Congressional District, which spans from the Port of Los Angeles all the way to the Watts Tower. This bill was introduced in the last Congress, and the Congresswoman Barragan has indicated that she will reintroduce this bill in the 117th. The bill was originally introduced with 21 original co-sponsoring members, including 2 from our delegation. The bill also enjoys wide support from 16 local and national environmental and health organizations, such as the American Lung Association, League of Conservation Voters, Union of Concerned Scientists, East Yards for Environmental Justice of San Pedro, and Peninsula Homeowners Association, and many more. The bill also is supported by the International Longshore Warehouse Union, as well as some of the local IBEW, and her staff have indicated that they are continuing discussions with additional IBEW groups. It's just been a little challenging with COVID. The purpose of the bill is to reduce air pollution and greenhouse gases and to provide economic stimulus through investment and improvements in the goods movement industry. Specifically, the bill would create a $1 billion EPA grant program for zero emissions port equipment and infrastructure. The term port in the bill includes both maritime and inland port facilities and infrastructure. Examples of zero emissions projects include replacement of diesel cargo handling equipment, port harbor craft, drayage trucks, rail, shore power, electric charging infrastructure, and clean energy microgrids. And those are just examples. Eligible entities to apply would include air pollution agencies, and it were specific air pollution control agencies and air quality management districts are specifically listed in the bill. So South Coast AQMD, a port authority, a state or regional, local, or tribal agency could apply that has jurisdiction over a port or a port authority. Also, a private or nonprofit entity with one of the more aforementioned organizations, so a partnership, could apply, or an entity that owns or uses cargo or transportation equipment at a port. Significantly, the bill also prioritizes eligible entities based upon the degree to which the grant would reduce criteria and hazardous air pollutants and greenhouse gases. Also prioritizing grants that would reduce public health disparities in communities that receive a disproportionate amount of air pollution from a port. the ability or port facility, the ability to provide matching non-federal funds, and the purchase of equipment and technology made in the US, and any participation in a state or federal apprenticeship program. So training is also a high priority in this program. Further, the bill also requests the EPA that 25% of all of the grants should be awarded in non-attainment areas, which is also very helpful for the South Coast. The cost share for the grants would be 70%, but for grants that are greater than $3 million, the cost share could be as high as 85% federal if the entity can certify that the grant will result in employment and there is a focus on union and hiring local. And the bill would also authorize an additional $50 million in a new kind of DERA category for specifically for ports. So in short, the bill would create 2 new opportunities for South Coast AQMD to apply for federal grants to reduce air pollution related to goods movement, and staff recommend a position of support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, you're muted, Judy. Madam Chair, you're still muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking over. That's the common plea in a Zoom meeting. You're still muted. You know.
Thank you for coming back. I got the bill wrong. So I know this is your last meeting, Madam Chair. I don't know what we'll do without you.
I'm sure somebody can take over this job. So anyway, but it's a fun job. So I hope somebody gets it who will enjoy it as much as I have. Interesting bill, and certainly could benefit our region. But I'm not sure whether we know where the funding is coming from. We're still, we can get the bill passed, but we still need to find where's the money going to trickle in for this, the $1 billion a year that's proposed. Any ideas on that, Lisa?
So as you alluded to, it's just an authorization, and we'll go through an appropriations process. In the last Congress, though, Congresswoman Bagan was very successful in having the text of this bill rolled into 2 larger bills, one being HR 2, which was the House Moving Forward Framework, and the other being the energy bill. So she's been quite successful. And what happened is through the committee process and the collegial dialogue that goes back and forth, the program was reduced to a $500 million grant program per year. So the $1 billion number there is sort of the starting point. And through the committee process and dialogue, a number will be arrived at. And if it's successful, and then the appropriations committee will do their work.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions for Elisa?
Madam Chair, if I can, I just want to, no questions, but recognize my Congress member, Annette Bagan, for leading this effort. This is very important to us here at the port communities and throughout our South Coast region. We do have this bold vision of a zero emissions port for the San Pedro Bay ports. And we've often said that we can't do this alone, and we need our partners in the federal government to help and find ways to identify dollars and monies to create these green jobs and be able to ultimately lower our emissions here, but also do so in a way that it's a balanced approach where we bring in our labor partners, industry partners as well. So, and you pose a good question, Madam Chair. This is a great bill, but we have to identify the dollars moving forward. I'm hopeful that now having a Democratic-controlled Congress will able to put politics aside and do what's right for our region as we move forward on lowering emissions in this area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And it's also, if we can get some of this money, it will be useful in turning over our drayage trucks in the ports to the cleanest technology. And of course, that ends up benefiting our inland empire, where we have so much of our goods movement going on. I know that's an issue that Supervisor Rutherford has been talking a lot about. Let's get clean trucks, and so this is a measure that would help us get to that ultimate goal as well. So if there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion. The staff recommends a support on this bill, and I would look for someone to bring a motion on.
Make the motion to approve. Staff recommendation to support.
Thank you.
Second.
A second from Supervisor Perez, and may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Burke, Councilmember Buscaino,
Yes.
Senator Delgado, Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, good. Thank you. Then we have another bill that's recommended here. Let me see if I can get back to the beginning of my agenda. This is HR 8775, something that Supervisor Perez will certainly be interested in. And I believe Lisa is going to give the report on this as well, the Salton Sea Public Health and Environmental Protection Act.
Madam Chair, just before, we didn't ask for public
Oh, I'm
comment.
sorry, I didn't ask for public comment. Let's go there first. Public comment on the Bagan bill.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thanks for reminding me on that. And now we'll move over to Lisa on the next bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm presenting on HR 8775, the Salton Sea Public Health and Environmental Protection Act that was introduced by Congressman Raul Ruiz, who represents Banning and Hemet all the way through eastern Coachella Valley, including a portion of the Salton Sea. He was joined by Representative Juan Vargas in the neighboring 51st Congressional District as well. The bill was introduced toward the end of the last Congress in late November with a broad base of support, including the California Natural Resources Agency Secretary Wade Crowfoot, Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, and our own supervisor and Salton Sea Vice Chair, Supervisor Perez, the Audubon California Environmental Defense Fund, Pacific Institute, and the Salton Sea General Manager. The bill would require the Secretary of Interior acting through the Bureau of Reclamation to improve water quality, mitigate dust, protect public health, and restore the environment and habitat at the Salton Sea. The Bureau of Reclamation would be required to construct dust control, habitat mitigation projects at the Salton Sea in coordination with the Salton Sea Management Plan. It would also require that federally funded projects cover a similar acreage of the exposed lake bed as California funded projects. The bill would also create a Salton Sea Management Council to coordinate activities among the federal agencies and with state and local authorities. And South Coast AQMD is specifically noted as a local agency that coordination is required. Additionally, the bill would require a report to the House Natural Resources Committee on the funding and technical resources needed to address the issues at the Salton Sea and an annual air quality report. The Salton Sea is the largest inland lake covering 376 square miles in Riverside and Imperial counties. And historically, South Coast AQMD has been an active partner with federal, state, and local entities to address the air quality and public health issues. Most recently, the governing board adopted AB 617 Community Emissions Reduction Plan for the Eastern Coachella Valley, which included concerns about emissions from the Salton Sea, including particulate matter, agricultural runoff and contamination, and elevated levels of hydrogen sulfide. Overall, HR 8775 by Representative Raul Ruiz would facilitate coordination and address air quality, environmental, and public health issues in line with South Coast AQMD's governing board policies and our commitment to AB 617. Staff recommends a position of support. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions on this particular bill?
Madam Chair.
Comments? Supervisor Perez, go ahead.
Thank you. Not necessarily question, but thank you for the report, Lisa. And thank you, staff, Derek, and others that followed up on this. And as a matter of fact, I understand that we've already made contact with the congressman. I think he texted me maybe a week ago or so, letting me know that there's conversation taking place. I think this is, obviously we still have a ways to go with the Salton Sea. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but I will say that we've done quite a bit within the last 10 years, probably more so within the last 10 years than we've had in the last 40 years. I would say that this is one of the missing links. It somewhat reminds me of AB 71, which we passed in the state legislature back in 2010, and which created the Salton Sea Management 10-year plan. And it allowed for coordination and consultation between the locals, the Salton Sea Authority, and the state of California, such as the Department of Natural Resources, for example, and other departments. The struggle that we've had over the course of years is coordination and consultation at every level of government. And so this is one of the missing pieces in which now the federal government would play a larger role in ensuring mitigation efforts, dust control efforts, such as dust control efforts, alongside funding, with the hope of funding in the future. The Army Corps of Engineers, if I said that correctly, would be an entity that would be very helpful as well moving forward. And so overall, I think that this is needed. And I'm hoping that I could get the support of my colleagues in moving this and supporting this piece of legislation in hopes that we get it passed through Congress and eventually the president to sign. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Perez. There's another AB 617 community that borders the Salton Sea, that is the southern end of the Salton Sea. That's Eduardo Garcia's territory. And I visited that area as well as East Coachella.
Well, that's exactly the area.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the Salton Sea has presented a lot of problems with respect to air quality. Ag runoff into the Salton Sea then creates, chemicals that are within the Salton Sea, and then that dries up along the edges, the playa, and dust, and wind comes and blows that up into dust, and then we have a big air quality problem with that as well. But it's a huge agricultural area, that whole region. It's very productive agricultural economy for our state and nation. So important area. Are there any questions from other committee members on this particular bill? Is there any public comment?
No public comment, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'll look for a motion on this bill. And Supervisor Perez?
Yes, please, I'll make a motion.
Second?
Okay, a separate second from Councilmember Buscaino, and a roll call, please.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you very much. We come toward the end of the agenda. Is there any other business to come before the committee today?
Madam Chair, I just want to recognize your leadership in this committee. I know this is your last legislative committee meeting as our chair. You've led us with such distinction and grace and conviction, and your commitment to overall reduction of our air pollutants here in our district will go unnoticed. And you definitely have left a mark, Judy. We love you. We're going to miss you. And may God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. This has really been a wonderful committee to chair. And some of you have gone to Washington with us. Supervisor Rutherford has. And we've had wonderful experiences in Washington, meeting with our representatives there, our consultants, and as well as trips to Sacramento. So it's really been a good experience for me. I just think every day how lucky I am to have had this opportunity to do this kind of work. It's important work, and I know you all will carry on and do a fine job. And it's been a pleasure working with all of you. I mean, I have such respect for all of you and your dedication to your own public service and the work that we do. So I will miss you all, but I'm looking forward to some more free time and doing some other things. So with that, do we have public comment from the public in general? Go ahead, Jen.
Just joined Joe in commending you. You've been a pleasure to serve with, and you and I had the pleasure of working together at the League of Cities for many years before this AQMD. You've always been so attentive and responsive and been out here to the Inland Empire to tour facilities and meet with industry, and really appreciate that. I wish you all the best as you step out of public service. I'm sure there are so many things that you have put off that you're going to absolutely love having the time to do, and I wish you all the best for that, and do keep in touch. And if you're ever driving through the area out this way, please give me a call.
I would. Yeah.
I did want to ask either our staff or our state folks if they're still on the line. I have been hearing that there are some work on an environmental bond in Sacramento, and wondering if we are tracking that and if they're looking at money for air quality that would benefit us.
So Wayne, you want me to answer or you want to answer?
Go ahead, Derek.
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor Rutherford. Yes, we're tracking all the funding opportunities. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one as we move forward and as the session moves on, and we'll keep you apprised. We'll keep you and Mark apprised of it as it goes along.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may as well echo my colleagues and just thank you for all the great work you've done over the course of many years. In a short time that I've gotten to know you as a member of AQMD, I've seen your steadfast support for environmental justice and for social justice overall, specific to underserved communities. And believe me, that does not go unnoticed. And I appreciate your guidance. I definitely respect you a lot, so much. And I also appreciate your hard work and just your methodical strategies of thinking and how you go about delivering a message and how do you ensure that it gets done at the end of the day. So that's always a craft. That's always an art. And so thank you so much, Mayor Mitchell, for everything you've done for all our communities throughout Southern California and for the state of California as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words. And I can remember working on the California League of Cities with Janice many years ago. And it was so many years ago that it was the time that her boys were born, and her twin boys, and such darling children. And now they're all grown up. I don't know if they're in college or if they're where they are now, but that's a long time to be doing this work, and very rewarding work as well. So I think I asked if there was public comment on general public comment. Is there anybody, Ron?
There is no public comment.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn to the next meeting on February 12th. And I wish you all well and a good weekend, a good holiday for MLK.
Thank
Bye
you,
all.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Be well. Be kind.